Let's do this because I like to treat this platform the same way I do any platform that I get to speak on is to let's consecrate a little bit and let's take a quick moment for those of us who are of the believing type to just pray. If you would suffer me for a few seconds, so we can start this thing off with the right guidance. Holy Spirit, first and foremost, we thank you, we honor you, and we set time aside to be present. We don't feel foolish enough to invite you into spaces that we know you already occupy. So instead, Lord, we just acknowledge you being here. We acknowledge your presence and your influence in this moment. We pray that you would speak to us and speak through us. I pray that today's message empowers someone, informs someone, and motivates someone to be a change agent in whatever respective space you may have them planted in this season. We submit this time to you graciously and confidently, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, well, listen, we're here. I like to start off all of my talks by doing the same thing and asking you, oh, where are you at right now? So do me a favor, jump into the chat. I can see you over here on screen number 4. I've got too many of them. So if you jump into chat, tell me where you're logging in from right now. And the question that I'd like to ask is, are you currently occupying a space in ministry? If you are clergy, if you're a pastor, reverend, preacher, anything of that nature, yes. And if not, you're still welcome here. Let me know. Just say, nope, I'm just curious. That's okay too. Minneapolis, Virginia. I need to know what part of Virginia you're tagging in from, Tanya. I see my friend Erskine in the room. Great speaker, great friend. Thank you for joining in today. Philly Music Ministry. I love it. You're talking to a fellow worshiper here. Kansas City, Missouri. I've been there. A lay employee at St. Andrews. Love it. Milford, Connecticut, Tampa, Florida. London. Hello, London. Cleveland. I was just in Cleveland. Northern Virginia. I see ya. New York. I'll be in New York next week, Jeff. Love it. More New York, Connecticut, Savannah, Georgia, lay, clergy. Yep. DC. Just left DC. I was preaching in DC. Great church in DC. I was preaching at recently. I love it. I love it. I actually take the time to read these. Lagos, Nigeria. Freedom. I have a client in Lagos, Nigeria, a coaching client. Johannesburg, South Africa. All right, so for all of my friends in Africa right now, there is a strong chance either next year or potentially 27, I'll be leading a conflict management and leadership cohort either in West Africa or South Africa. We're trying to figure out which one that's going to be through. That's through the work I do at the University of Buffalo. So stay tuned. Okay, great. So, and I got some friends, I got some messages from folks that say, hey, I follow you on social media. Lots of gluttons for punishment in here. Listen, it's an absolute honor. It's a pleasure to spend the next few minutes with you. We'll be finished around 2 o'clock. Here's a couple of notes I'll leave for you all. If we're just here to listen to Ryan talk, you're not going to get a whole lot out of this. This is one of those moments where I know sometimes we're at work or we're at home, we're doing two things at once, and that's okay. I'm not here to put anybody on the spot, but I will say there'll be some time for conversation a little bit later. And if you will allow yourself a few minutes to connect with your fellow attendees and engage in some conversation, I think you're going to get a lot more out of this than just simply listening to me talk. This is not an audio book. This is a class. And I love the idea of dyadic communication and bidirectional communication flow. So that's what I'm hoping we can do here today. Let me go ahead and jump into my screen share and let's get this rodeo started. Okay, and now I need to put everybody on the proper screen. Uh-oh, what's going on over here? Give me 1 second. Okay, excellent. You all should be able to see that. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can see everything, if you can see the slides. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about conflict management for innovators. And I think this is really important because right now we are in a time in a ministry space where we are seeing a lot of innovation. We're seeing a lot of change. We're experiencing it, seeing it. Some of us are leading it. And one of the things that we know about change and innovation is that it comes with conflict. Conflict is a part of the process of innovation because we are effectively taking that which is known and comfortable, and we are subjecting ourselves to that which is unknown and uncomfortable. Hence, innovation. So we're going to talk a little bit about innovation, and then we're going to talk about conflict and how to effectively respond to it. So this is why we get this topic here of conflict management for innovators, finding the courage to lead change and be changed. If this is something that you are currently navigating right now, I know our Leaders Way fellows are navigating a innovation ministry project right now, but for them and for anyone else, if you are currently in the midst of a workplace innovation, change is happening, you're in the middle of that storm right now, throw a one in the chat real quick so I can know exactly who I'm talking to. If you're seeing something coming on the horizon, change is coming, put a one in the chat. Okay, so good. I'm not talking to myself. I love that. Yep. Okay. Excellent. So let's jump into some conversation about this. So, some learning objectives for you. By the end of the course, you're going to be able to differentiate conflict management from conflict resolution, identify and interpret common barriers to innovation, diagnose some root causes of resistance in your respective community. Again, this can be secular, this can be faith-based. So we recognize that everybody on the call right now is not occupying the same space. We are called to minister to people in different spaces and to influence people in different ways. So wherever that may be for you, we want you to be able to recognize resistance to innovation there, and then apply some proven strategies to reduce said resistance. And I want to set the tone here with a very short reference to scripture, Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I will do a new thing. I like to teach from this space of what I call the one thing. Anyone who's done work with me in the past knows that I like to emphasize the one thing because we need to understand what is it that we're trying to convey, get across, and learn. And so for our time today, it is this. I believe that God is about the business of doing new things. And throughout the Bible, we find many examples of God doing new things through people, which means you have to be someone who is capable of being deployed to do new things, i.e., you are an innovator. You are a change agent. You're a change maker, an atmosphere shifter, whatever you want to call it, it is you. And I don't know if anybody woke up today knowing that about yourself, but I'm here to give you a reminder or perhaps tell you for the first time that you are not average. If you are here on this call right now, I'm telling you, you're not average. There is a call and an assignment that each of us has. And most of the work that we do is not to keep things the same. Most of what we do is to help navigate, facilitate, or usher in change. And many of us don't do that well because of our humanity. We like predictability, we like comfort, we like sameness, we like all of the things that feel safe and secure and foundational. And so what we find is that change is hard. And people who are in positions to lead change sometimes lead stagnantly. We don't do this well. So we're going to talk about stagnation. We're going to talk about what this looks like. And here's the question I'd like you to be asking yourself as we go through this talk. And also don't hesitate to throw comments and things in the chat. Let's pretend I'm preaching and you can give me an amen anytime you want to. It helps make me make sure that I'm saying all the good things, okay? If you've got questions, throw them in the chat as well. Okay. So I want you to ask yourself this question as I'm going through this chat. Are you someone who is a change agent, or are you someone who is resistant to change? In your place of work, in your place of assignment, wherever you're occupying space right now, I want you to ask yourself, honestly, assess yourself. Are you a change agent or are you a barrier to change? I'm not saying either one of those is good or bad. I'm not saying either one is good or bad because you can be and you can occupy space where change is happening too quickly, and we need mooring cleats. Mooring cleats are the giant metal brackets on the side of a dock that we tie giant cruise ships to so they don't get swept away in the current. We need people who do that too. Sometimes though, we need people to be the current. We need to be able to move a big ship. And so we typically have a default. Sometimes we're resistant in seasons where we probably should push a little bit, and sometimes we push in seasons where we should probably hold back a little bit, which is why we do great in community. Okay. Yeah, I like it. And I agree with you guys in the chat, right? I think most of us can kind of do a little bit of both. We do a little bit of both. So let's talk a little bit about challenges that the church is facing right now. And again, I know some of us aren't in church, so feel free to take this language here and apply it to your relative industry. But here's what we know. Here's some things we've observed. Barna's done a lot of research and studies on this, so I've kind of compiled this not as an academic today, just as a teacher. So there's not a lot of statistics on here. Generally speaking, though, the research, the data is pointing us in this direction. Post-COVID church in-person attendance has declined. Has anyone been seeing that where you're attending? Has attendance declined at all? We're also seeing people stepping back and digressing. And there's such a great model that I saw of what this is looking like. So people who are in positions of leadership are falling back into positions of volunteerism. People who are volunteers are falling back into this space of just being observers. And people who were notorious observers are now just absent. And we're seeing this digression of attendance and engagement throughout all of ministry. A lot of the work, you know what? I got to pause for a second because I didn't do a good job of introducing myself to people who don't know my background. Let me just do this real quickly so that I can qualify this, what I'm going to say. As a consultant, I'm called in to work with a lot of churches who are navigating pressure, high pressure problems. Here's how I got here. I'm a former executive pastor of a church in Atlanta, which is Victory Church. I started there as the director of security because I came out of my season of law enforcement into ministry in a non-pastoral capacity as what's called the security director. But then I became the pastor of life safety and eventually the executive pastor of operations. For context, Victory is a large church. At the time, I don't. It's pastor math, so we call it 20,000 attendees, 20,000 members. That could be high, that could be low. It's pastor math. You guys know how that works. So I have 20,000 attendees online and in person across 4 campuses, and I served as the director of operations. I left that space. I joined Georgia's human traffic. Nope, that's what it was called. The Sexual Assault Response Team State Expert Committee, and I led what's called the Faith Subcommittee for the governor and for the JCC because we wanted to help churches across the state of Georgia improve how they respond to allegations of sexual misconduct. Transitioned out of that role, became the executive director of an anti-human trafficking organization, a faith-based anti-trafficking organization for the state of Tennessee, and sat on Tennessee's Human Trafficking Advisory Council in that capacity. I served in a collateral role as the executive pastor of strategic development for City Light Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee, while I was in that seat. And then we moved back to Atlanta, and I spent a season as the pastor of strategy and leadership development for Change Church. Whew. Okay. So I've sat in a couple of ministerial roles, pastoral roles as an executive pastor for 3 churches and led a faith-based nonprofit. Here's why I share that. Um, I'm navigating these conversations from 2 seats, one from the seat of a pastor and also from the seat as a consultant. And I've worked with a lot of churches who are navigating a lot of these issues right now. Okay. So that's the perspective I offer. But I also know that many of you have your own unique perspectives as well. So feel free to share your perspectives. I've only got one vision, one view of this, and you all may have other views. So, yeah, so I'm looking at your chats here. Less attendance for some. We've seen online attendance decline as well for some people. We've had leaders that have resigned. I know I got called to work with a church in the Northeast, and one of their big issues was that the church was very traditional, and they had a lot of disconnect between folks who had been in the ministry there for 30 or 40 years and a lot of the younger folks who were feeling a little disenfranchised. And so they had some numbers fall off there too. So here's what we can say conclusively is that attendance is down for most churches. But the reason that attendance is down is different from church to church or space to space. I think there's a nexus here, not just for ministry though. I think we can call this community. I think we can call this workplace industry anyway, because we saw trends like cancel culture and quiet quitting. And what we're seeing now in general is just a lack of willingness to sustain in spaces where people don't feel 100% connected to. If I don't feel like I'm connected to this space 100%, I'm tapping out. And that's typically what we're seeing. And there's this great quote from Ronald Reagan some years ago that is, I'm going to butcher this. It sounds something like a person who agrees with you 80% of the time is not a 20% enemy. And it's this idea that you can align with people a little bit and still be in community with them and proximity to them without needing to be 100% aligned. And what we're seeing is the tolerance for people to occupy space with people they aren't 100% aligned with is declining. Mental health is declining. Our willingness to be in space with people, spend time with people is declining. So just different reasons in different spaces, secular or faith-based spaces, we're seeing some decline in how people are engaging. We're also seeing increased technology. This goes on and on. We could do a whole week-long conversation just on this topic here because we see technology differently. Here's what we know. AI influencers and algorithms are discipling more people than churches. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. What I'm saying is people with the biggest microphone and the largest platform tend to have the biggest influence in people's lives, even if they're not the most grounded, the most educated, if they are not the most qualified people, simply because they are popular, they are now prominent. And one of the big challenges that we're having is the voice of the church is increasingly being overshadowed by the voice of the world. So we can say the world is a lot louder than the word these days for a lot of people. We also know that many churches lack the ability to speak meaningfully in the spaces where people are congregating. That is the internet, social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. A lot of churches are struggling to find their voice in this digital economy. And so they are now finding that their voice is being overshadowed in those spaces. And we also know from research that religious affiliated individuals are far more skeptical about AI than non-religious affiliated folks. I think in general, the world is a little skeptical at the pace of generative AI. One of the don't quote me on these numbers. I think the number was about 36% of people are just like generally like really optimistic about what AI looks like compared to about 25 or 26% of religious affiliated people. So there's a 10% gap just there in that space. And we're seeing AI is being questioned in a lot of ways, in terms of how content is being created, how pastors are writing sermons, is there a space for AI there? You've got far extremes on this. So we just know that that's a challenge. We know that relevance in a rapidly changing culture is a big challenge for churches right now. The youth are coming up in a world that the church has not fully investigated. And so we're seeing a lot of people who are navigating pain and loneliness and dynamics of mental health and complexity in new ways that pastors, quite frankly, don't know how to speak to. And we're struggling to meet the need. It's almost like there's a new sickness and we've only got old medicine. Not because the word isn't enough, but because we haven't learned how to deploy it effectively to deal with some of these new challenges. And again, this isn't Ryan's opinion. I'm kind of paraphrasing research here. So I'm gonna make sure we're clear here. I'm just kind of paraphrasing what's been shared. We're seeing a lot of clergy leaders fail to effectively engage with younger generations who expect spiritual leadership to address complex modern dilemmas. The world is complex these days, and it's not enough to say, hey, go away and pray about it. Go away and pray about it. It's almost, what it brings to mind is this first Samuel conversation where Eli and Samuel are having this conversation, and Samuel keeps going to the priest Eli saying, hey, I keep hearing someone call my name. And, Eli's like, hey, go back to sleep. It ain't me. you know, in effect, eventually at some point, it's clear that Samuel needs help interpreting this. And it took Eli to get out of his rhythm, of his pattern of dismissiveness and say, hey, wait a minute. The next time you hear this, I need you to respond this way. I need you to change your approach and see if you can experience something different, if you can get some new knowledge and information from this. And I think what's happening, a lot of us in ministry, gosh, man, we're exhausted, we're tired, we're trying to keep up, that we're not doing a great job of meeting people where they are. We're really hoping that people can meet us where we are. And it's really hard to give a bespoke personal approach for everybody's individual problem. And so when people are coming and saying, I'm hearing this, I'm seeing this, I'm experiencing this, it's really easy to say, hey, join a small group. Hey, why don't you pray about that? Hey, let me give you our pastoral care team kind of, talk to your youth pastor about that. And I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just, I think we're recognizing that it's really hard for the ministers to be ministered to in this season. All right. So we've got to find new ways to do old things. Okay. So what this requires is innovation, right? When we see this example in Isaiah, behold, I'm doing a new thing. What we're hearing is innovation. Innovation is happening. And what is innovation? It is simply an introduction of something new. That's what innovation is. If we wanted to kind of make it a little bit more technical, we could say it's a systematic practice of developing and marketing breakthrough products and services for adoption by customers. This is typically what I think most people think about when they hear innovation. We think of it in a capitalistic space or technological space. We think of innovation and we almost always think of technology. And I think this is probably one of the reasons we have been ineffective at navigating and shepherding change because there is this resistance to technology. And because there's a resistance to technology, and because we conflate innovation with technology, we tend to close our eyes and say, nope, not here. We're not doing that. So this becomes really problematic for a lot of us. And so the one thing I want us all to recognize here is that innovation is not necessarily synonymous with technology. Innovation has a lot of looks and feels to it. And here are some examples. Just for those of us who understand this practically. Redesigning the formats of our worship, that's innovation. Implementing new pastoral care practices, new ways to care for people. This is innovation. Creating new discipleship pathways. We're seeing a lot of folks are kind of doing this assimilation process, these four-step, long assimilation discipleship practices, and some of it is hybrid with in-person and video-based learning. We're seeing some folks are taking discipleship into these new spaces called house churches or community-based learning. It's all innovation. And I think what we have to do as individuals is we really just have to kind of measure our own appetite and capacity for innovation, right? I'm not going to go through this whole list. Just, suffice it to say that innovation is simply asking this question. I love that, Joy. Curiosity is linked to it, right? It's simply asking, how else can this be done? And for those of us who are concerned about going too far in the wrong direction, how else can this be done in such a way that God still gets the glory? That's okay. That's okay, right? But we also have to ask other questions. How else can this be done so that God gets the glory? So that we can still build the kingdom, so that in a change can still take place, so that lives can still be changed, so that ministry can still happen, so that the good news can be shared. Because I'm going to tell you, if the church decides that microphones and megaphones is the only way to reach people, and people stop showing up to the gathering, we're gonna struggle a little bit. And I'll take a reach here. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna get into any exegetical dissection of the text here, but I think there's just a general idea we can take from this idea of going to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the outer reaches of the earth, right? When we look at Great Commission, when we look at Acts and understanding what it looks like to go and reach people where they are, I think we have to understand that that's not just geographic because we're gathering in more places than physical spaces. And so technology happens to be a way and a place where people meet. And here's the thing I want you to consider too. Let's get into it real quick. I know technology feels evil for a lot of people, but let's ask a different question. Who else is on the internet? Who else is in technology? I know that there are people who watch church online virtually right now because of disabilities. They can't physically get into the building. They may need to hear exactly what the Lord is trying to say. And if you're not about the business of going to the outer reaches of the earth and being where the people are, and if you don't have a bunch of friends who can lower you through the roof, your proverbial roof lowering might be turning on the internet and listening to a word from someone who has decided to take up residence online. Don't think that's a bad thing. Um, I know that there are people, and I'll take a personal testimony here. My daughter is one of my daughters. I'm sorry, I have four children. One of my daughters has anxiety, OCD, ADHD. She's everything we need to do in the spiritual sense we do. We pray, we lay hands, and we're believing and trusting. There are some practical things that we do in the flesh to make sure that she's safe in certain spaces. Guys, I'm gonna tell you, the gathering for her is a stressful place. It's hard for her to go and stand in a room full of people and loud music and worship, or to have to bump people and be in proximity to people. So you know where she thrives? Oh my gosh, she thrives online. She thrives online. Can listen to a message and bring back some text and cross-reference it, and oh yeah, that reminds me of this, dad, it reminds me of this, that. We don't get that when she's in the building sometimes. We know that there are people who live in spaces where there are no churches to go to. They are landlocked. They are in parts of the world where ministry is dangerous. They may need to hear from you. They can do it on technology. We A couple of years ago in Tennessee, when I was at City Light Church, I'm going to tell you where my old man button came in, where I was like, nah, I don't know about that. We had a team member who was really, really big into the metaverse. The metaverse. I was like, okay. And he says, hey, we're gonna take up residence in the metaverse, and we're gonna put a church in the metaverse. I said, you have lost your mind. I'm just being honest, guys. I wasn't a fan. And we came into a Monday meeting one day. I am not making this up. Came into a Monday meeting one day, and he says, hey guys, we're doing our regular praise reports, right? We get all the prayer cards, the emails, and we're going over all of this. And he says, hey, we got some praise reports from the metaverse church. And I said, huh? What? And he had screenshots of these virtual avatars. And what they did was they set up a physical, it looks like Minecraft for people who are just kind of listening to me and saying, what are you talking about? It's virtual reality. It looks like Minecraft, and you can do all sorts of questionable things in the metaverse. But what they did was they set up a physical building you can walk into with your avatar character. And there was a screen on the back wall in this digital building that bared the likeness and name of our church. And it was live streaming our Sunday church service. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And when we would, do our call to salvation, people would have their avatars at the altar with their hands up. People were tithing and offering from the metaverse. So it's wild. But folks, that's innovation. And here's what I would ask you. If the enemy is there, why can't God be there too? If we know the internet is full of evil, what's the one thing that we can use to attack the darkness? It's the light. So listen, I am not telling everybody on here to jump into the metaverse. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, what if we expanded the way we think about changing the way we've done things in accordance to your doctrine and your understanding and your interpretation of it? These are questions. These are not commands, right? We've got different appetites. So within the bounds and the confines of comfort, we can at least think through what's possible. Okay? That's what we're trying to do here. Okay. Um, so here's what we know. Here's the challenge with innovation. For a lot of us in church, innovation feels weird. It feels weird. It feels like modernization, technology takeover, opportunity, creativity for some. It feels like liberalism for others. It feels like a loss of identity, a threat to stability, a threat to well-being. Oh my gosh, we're losing the church. We're losing our tradition. It doesn't feel the way it used to back in my day. All of the things. This isn't the vision that the Lord had. Whatever that language is that we have, this is a real thing when we start innovating. And this is why if you go across the landscape of the world and you say, hey, what does worship look like to you? You've got some people with lights and smoke machines and big speakers and things, and you've got others with an acoustic guitar and a hymnal. And so again, the point of the discourse here is just to recognize that for some people, innovation is like, yep, let's do it. And other people are like, absolutely not. And the reason this is important for you all is because I'm assuming most of you are in some leadership role and you are going to be responsible for leading innovation or navigating difficult conversations with people who are resistant to innovation. Let's change the word innovation to change. You're going to be leading through changes and you're going to have to navigate resistances with people who don't like change. You need to be able to do that well. Change can be anything. We're going to change our leadership structure. We're going to change our leadership team. We're going to change the name of this ministry. You know how people get attached to the name of a ministry? You start changing the name of things, people start losing their composure. But you got to understand why. It's because, especially for us church folk, we like stability and predictability. We like sameness. So instead of calling people out, we need to call people up. Instead of pointing a finger, we extend a hand. We help people understand the whys and the what's behind what it is that we're doing. Okay. So just recognize that this feels different for different people. That's the lesson here. Okay. This is a visualization of really understanding something about innovation too, is something called a performance dip. And I think for a lot of us who sit in executive seats or senior pastor seats, one of the things we know about change is we can lose people, we can lose momentum, we can lose offerings, tithing and offering. When you change things too much, it can have a negative impact on the organization. And this curb is something that we experience both emotionally, but also operationally, right? We call it the performance dip. We know that there's a space and time from the moment we implement change to the time change is fully adopted, that things are going to get worse before they get better. Right? Why? Change requires us to slow down. It might require us to take a couple of steps backwards. It might require us to develop new practices and processes. Then we have to teach and train. Even if everyone's on board, things have to slow down. And this is why some people are resistant to it because there's this fear that if I stop now, it's not sustainable. Some churches are one weekend away from closing their doors. There are two volunteers away from not being able to meet a ministry need. And so the idea that I now have to take someone who's already overwhelmed and overburdened and teach them a new thing, it's difficult. It's hard. So this is a very real kind of double-edged sword for a lot of us in ministry. Okay. It also feels like an attack on tradition. I think we can just be honest here. For some of us who are a little bit more old school, who came up in church, we might be a little bit more traditionalist, or maybe our denominations are just are more traditional than others. This can feel hard, right? Someone might look at the same innovation and say, "Man, changing this ministry model dishonors the way God has always worked here." And somebody else on the other end of that same argument might say, honoring what God has done doesn't prevent us from following what God is doing next. And I see this in leadership teams where there's this clash. I mean, and folks are just at odds with one another about what they're supposed to do here. Another example of this, I heard from a team that I was meeting with in Texas. These changes make it feel like we're abandoning our identity. And the opposite was being said on the other side of the room. Our identity is anchored in the gospel, not in any single method or model. And I can't tell you what's right, because what's right for you might not be right for someone else. So, these are hard conversations. These are hard conversations. Is anybody in any is this resonating with anybody? Like, are we experiencing any of this? Let me know in the chat. Are we having these conversations? Are we seeing these performance dips? Are we experiencing any sort of these different definitions where I see innovation or someone else sees innovation differently than I do? Okay. Yeah, yeah. Because here's the thing, man. Like gosh, I'm gonna step off the path for a second. One of the things that really hurts me is like, especially here in the Atlanta area, church is done 50,000 different ways here. And what you find is that because of these personal feelings we have, there are some very outspoken people in the church who are tearing down the church because we don't agree on how to go about having church. And so I think it scares us. I think there's this fear that we're going to be leading people astray. There's this One side of Atlanta is very like influencer heavy. It's like the influencer pastor, big social media following, big drive, lots of folks showing up on a Sunday, lines out the back door. And then you've got other people who, they have 20 or 30 people in their congregation. They know everybody's name and everyone's children's names and their homes and everybody thinks their model is better. And so there's a lot of infighting. And one thing I can tell you is, the methodology of the world is to divide and conquer. The methodology in the word, sorry, is that, a house divided cannot stand. And I want to challenge everyone here, regardless of your personal opinion on what church is or is not or should not look like. The question I would ask you is if you're seeing something that you are challenged with, what are you doing to either help, educate, grow, build, propel, push? And what are you doing to cause more confusion in the minds and hearts of people who might be looking at church from the outside, asking if they should jump in? Because I think a lot of times we diminish our own witness by the way we attack each other. I'm on a soapbox here, so I'm going to be quiet. But this is the challenge where I think we do a better job of tearing the church down than people outside of the church do because we don't necessarily agree on some things. Um, Here's the last thing, man. Innovation is costly. Time, comfort, control, predictability, familiar rhythms, emotional safety results, all these things. Okay. So here's what we're going to do real quick. It's 12:44. I want to do something. Here's my stance, right? Innovation creates resistance because it disrupts familiarity, challenges identity, threatens comfort, and forces people to navigate the tension between what they've known and what they're being asked to learn. This is the issue, okay? So we're going to transition from this conversation on innovation real quick. I'm going to get Dr. Nappy to come back in here and facilitate a quick breakout. This is the part where you guys get to talk a little bit to each other, okay? Please don't tune out. We're going to take a break after this. So if you need to use a bathroom and get a snack, hold it, because I want you to have this conversation with each other first, okay? So we're going to put you guys in quick conversation. And I want you to, with between yourselves, I want you to talk about this. What challenges or opportunities for innovation are present in your setting? Remember, everybody on the call might not be in ministry. That's okay. And where do you see the greatest tension or potential in your setting? We're just going to talk about it. Okay. And here's why we're going to talk about it. We tend to learn from the seat we're sitting in. So all of us right now have a very present problem in our prefrontal cortex that we're trying to rationalize and reasonably think our way through. And so this is how you're seeing the world. I want you to hear from other people who might be seeing the world a little bit differently so that we can have a dialectical approach to navigating this conversation, meaning we can see this from multiple sides and perspectives. I don't want you to challenge your own position. I want you to expand it. Just listen to other people and see what they're navigating. You also might get some great ideas about how other people are approaching the same problem. Jump back into my screen share because I want to give you guys the back end of this. Uh-oh, what happened to my screen? There we go. Okay, I'm going to hit that share button. Hey, if this is beneficial for you, if you're learning something or if your brain is being stretched even a little bit, can you just put a one in the chat so I can see it? And if you hate it, if it's not working for you, put a two in the chat and we can talk about it offline. All right, here we go. Yeah. I'm just getting my screens back organized since I'm doing my screen share because I want to be able to see your faces as I'm talking and teaching here. Okay. So listen, I skipped ahead a little bit in the deck, just so we can kind of get to these key takeaways that I want you to have. But here's what I'll just paraphrase for you all real quick. Not every conflict can be resolved, but generally speaking, conflict can be resolved. But what we're navigating usually with conflict and tension is not the conflict itself, it's the pressure it causes. In fact, I tell it this way. Most of us don't have a conflict management problem. What we have is a pressure management problem, right? So if I asked you how to de-escalate someone who was upset, how to calm someone down, most of us could come up with a couple of ideas on how to do that. If you got into an argument with someone and they were talking about your mama, and I gave you the option of yelling and screaming and cussing them out or speaking low and slow, giving them an opportunity to be heard and meeting them where they're at, I think most of us know that yelling, screaming, and cussing is probably not going to de-escalate tensions there, right? And so on and so on. So the thing that I don't think most people recognize is that generally speaking, we know how to approach conflict. We know the better thing to do. The problem is we don't know how to do it under pressure. We don't know how to do it when we're offended, when we're angry, when we're fearful, when we're scared, when we feel in like injustice is present. Whatever those emotions are, those things push us out of our character. It diminishes our performance ability and it alters our thinking, our rationality. And this is a big problem that a lot of us have. And this is why so many people who are good people when things are calm make really, really poor decisions under pressure. It's not that we don't know what to do, it's that we don't know how to do it when things aren't going well. Okay. So I share that with you because on the back end of this conversation on innovation, what we're dealing with is conflict, but what we're navigating is the pressure. It's the pressure. And so our ability to navigate the pressure is the differentiating factor between a great leader and a good leader. Because let me put it to you like this. There are, if you've ever studied leadership, I know we've got some theologians and we've got some scholars in the room. In grad school, I studied leadership. I didn't know you could study so much about leadership and still leave not knowing what leadership is. It was years of trying to understand what leadership is, and everyone still has different definitions of it. One of the things that I came away with from my graduate studies on leadership was this definition. I remember it was the very first class I took in grad school, Purdue University, go Boilermakers. Was we had to define leadership, and everybody had a different definition for it. And ever since I launched my practice here of navigating conflict, I have come up with a new definition for leadership, and it's this: leadership is problem solving. I don't care what anybody else says. Leadership is problem solving. That's a complete sentence and it's a mouthful. Because leaders who can't solve problems tend to become their organization's biggest problem. And most leaders fail to recognize that they are the problem. Leadership is problem solving. So our ability to navigate problems, to reduce pressure, is the call. It's the assignment. And if you're here right now and you're thinking about innovation and you're thinking about conflict and you're thinking about pushback and you're thinking about resistance, it's because your role is to relieve the pressure. And I want to show you some practical ways to go about doing that. Before I do that, I want to give you one more piece of context, and it's this idea about conflict management and conflict resolution, because the words are not synonymous. A lot of times when we talk about conflict, people think conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the practice of solving problems. And if you have the position of power necessary to be a problem solver, if you have, generally speaking, you've got buy-in from all parties involved. Generally speaking, if all parties involved desire peace at some level, you will be able to find some resolution. Okay? But not every problem you have can be resolved. Some problems have to be managed. There will forever be tension. There will always be misalignment. And that's okay. The problem happens with us when we try to manage problems that need to be solved, or when we try to solve problems that can only be managed. We over-index on issues. And so the one thing I want you to understand here is the difference between conflict resolution and conflict management. And I want you to put on the right hat for the rest of this conversation. Conflict resolution is sitting across the table from someone with a specific problem, agreeing on a specific outcome to move in a specific direction together, even if that same direction, if that direction is opposite directions. Conflict resolution can be, you know what? We're not made for each other. You go start your church over there. I'm going to start my church over here. Let's break the business in half. Whatever that is, you can still do that with a resolute mind, and you can do it with peace. You can do it without being ugly. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're moving in the same direction. It just means you're moving in a new direction together. That's resolution. Conflict management is a systematic approach to consistently reduce pressure associated with conflict that cannot be removed or resolved. It's ongoing. It doesn't go away. So for those of us who go to church and say, oh my gosh, I feel like it's a never-ending problem, you're probably right. You're a conflict manager, right? Oh my gosh, if we could just solve this problem, if we could just get rid of this issue. Nope, it's just going to be replaced with something else. It's called problem substitution. Okay, it's like trying to scoop out water from the ocean. As soon as you scoop that out, another problem is going to take its place. So, as leaders, we have to recognize that we have to equip ourselves with a resolute mind that says, okay, these are the kinds of things that I can resolve, but these are the things that are going to require my daily time, my daily investment of energy. Okay. So, I'm going to give you 4 ways we do this. And this is from the mind of a hostage negotiator turned pastor. Okay. 4 things that innovators must do in order to overcome resistance. Can everybody see the screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Practice number 1. Innovators must lead with conviction. Conviction, passion, resilience, determination, courage, self-reliance, vision. You have to be convicted. If I have to convince you that your idea is the right idea, you're not going to be able to generate buy-in, folks. Conviction is hard because a lot of us in ministry spaces, I know we don't want to admit it, we are people pleasers. And we don't like to do things that other people don't like. But when it comes to innovating for the benefit of the church or the ministry, you've got to have some conviction. What is conviction? Conviction is a knowing that even if you don't know, God knows. God told you to do it. That's what you're supposed to do. And you got to stand on business, 10 toes down. That you don't compromise God's direction because of someone else's attitude. We've got to have some conviction about it. And what I see a lot of times is leaders lead in ministry spaces without conviction. One of the most compelling conversations I had was with a gentleman who I want to be honoring, um, who was a leader with a pastor who has since publicly fallen in a very public way. If I said the person's name, everybody would know. That's not what this conversation's for. So we'll leave it there. But we had a very um, enlightening conversation. And one of the things that this person said was the leadership team around this fallen pastor lacked conviction. We needed to change the way we interacted with each other. We needed to change our internal culture. We needed to change some systems so that we had more internal accountability. We didn't do it. We didn't have the conviction. We had a theology of loyalty and honor, and it cost everybody massively. So we have to have conviction, because I'm going to tell you, most of the problems that churches face are not new problems. When I go into churches and we start talking about these really, really big conflict challenges that they're facing, scandals and things like that, it's been happening for years. Years. Nobody had the courage to speak up or say anything, stand on business. One of the crisis leadership courses that I took talked about this concept that almost no crisis occurs unknowingly. Almost every conflict or crisis we experience is predictable. We just failed to see the signs. It's not that the signs weren't there. We just failed to see them, or we failed to take action on them. Okay. So conviction, very important. 1 Corinthians 15:58, therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. This is us. It might not be everybody on your team. It might not be everybody you work with, but this is your assignment. If you're logged in right now, December 9th, 2025, 125, listening to me, this is you. Okay? This is your conviction. So some things to consider about how to lead with conviction. One, you got to be convicted but not combative. This is so important because I find that people who are very convicted in certain things don't know how to collaborate. They don't know how to invite people into conversation and community. All they know is force. All they know is how to be combative. So because what you believe is so important to you, you'll fight everybody else who doesn't believe it. And that doesn't work either. Okay. One of my favorite quotes on tact is it's the ability to make a point without making an enemy. I love that language. Right. And that's how we should all be operating, that we should be able to speak and lead in such a way. It's such a compelling way that when we are trying to innovate or lead change or navigate change, that we do it in such a way that is in conviction but not combative. We don't want to beat people up in the process. Okay, so know what you believe and let those principles guide decisions, but don't attack others or their principles. Okay, now this is a whole thing. I know that's kind of like a bite-sized chunk of information, and there's probably a lot of people sitting here saying, okay, but how? And I can tell you there are frameworks beyond frameworks beyond frameworks, dialectical thinking, Rogerian arguments, three-part assertive messages. There are so many communicative practices for communicating with conviction without being combative. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time for it. So I want to invite you to just research ways to be influential and persuasive as a leader and find something that works for you. Okay. Number two, be the standard. You want to be the example you hope others will someday become. People follow those who lead themselves well. If you study influence and persuasion theory, one of the things you'll understand is that people don't really get swayed by messages nearly as much as they are swayed by messengers. If I like you, if I trust you, if I believe in you, then you can almost do no harm. This is why most of us can point, we can probably call out three or four controversial people right now on planet Earth who we just viscerally don't like for one reason or another, and they have a strong following. Somebody somewhere likes them, okay? Because when you like a person, they can do no wrong, they can say no wrong. And this is just kind of the way it is. And so it's the way our brains work when it comes to persuasion and persuasion and influence. And so I just want you to understand that you may have a great message, but who are you as a messenger in the eye of your audience? When it comes to talking about change and innovation, understand what you're doing. Somebody put this in the chat. You're about to pull the rug out from somebody else's stability. You're going to change somebody else's reality. Nobody's going to do that if they don't like or trust you. If people are telling you no consistently when you're trying to implement change or lead change, part of the question you have to ask yourself is, I wonder what they feel about me. And if you're the kind of leader who's old school and says that you don't have to, I don't care how you feel about me, just do it. You're failing in 2025. These new generation people, these new kids, loyalty is not in their vocabulary. It's not in their lexicon. Okay. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just reality. That loyalty, stick around, do the right thing for the right, it's not a part of it. Not a part of it. Okay. So now we're getting really deep into leadership theory here, and we're understanding the importance of dyadic relationships, bidirectional relationships, that there's benefit on both ends. Nobody's going to come and follow you because you're in charge. There's owed respect and there's earned respect. And you might have a title, so I owe you some yes, sir, yes, ma'am. But outside of that, to get me to move off my X, that requires earned respect. And that means you might need to put your hands in the dirt. If you want to lead change and innovation, you have to do the work of building trust and relationship with people. This is why, as hostage negotiators, when I went through FBI interview and interrogation school, when I went through phase 1, phase 2 hostage negotiation training, when I went through our crisis communication training, every single framework we talked about starts with rapport building. Every single one starts with rapport building. Now I'm gonna tell you, you might not like what I'm telling you, but here's the truth. Hostage negotiators are 94% successful in critical conversations in which an armed or barricaded gunman has people held against the wall. 94% of the time, we are successful in those conversations. How successful are you in your hard conversations? If it works at gunpoint, it'll work at church. Build rapport. Build rapport. Okay? I'm telling you, it works. I know that sounds funny, but I'm telling you, from the interrogation room into the prayer room, folks, this is what you got to do. Rapport matters. Okay. All right, let's move on. Persevere through pressure. Take time to prioritize self-care. Listen, nobody can grow from a sick leader who has so much conflict residue on their hands that every time they touch them, they make other people sick too. Okay. We got to be healthy, especially because we know that innovation is so costly. We know that it's so hard. You've got to make sure that you're in a good place before you try to take people there with you, because everyone's going to take a hit. It's exhausting. It's tiring, all the things. Okay. So we want to lead with conviction. Be convicted, not combative. Be the standard and persevere through pressure. This is for you. Before you do anything for anybody else, this is for you. Next, innovators must identify resistances. This is so interesting to me because a lot of times when people push back against innovation and change, some of us automatically assume it's disobedience. We automatically assume that it's because people are just being difficult. And we tell ourselves if they would just get with the program. But we have to understand that there are a lot of things that drive these resistances. It's not always a lack of faith or closed-mindedness. Sometimes it's fatigue. Sometimes it's identity threat. Sorry. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's fear. And I love this from Nehemiah. Then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there is so much rubbish that we are not able to build the wall. Could you imagine being the king's cupbearer, the form of Nehemiah, praying, fasting, weeping, waiting for your king to give you the thumbs up to do the thing that God already told you to do? King agrees, sends you out there, you start rebuilding this wall. And in the book of Nehemiah, we read that they are rebuilding this wall with weapons in one hand and tools in the other. The enemy is out to get them as they are trying to do a God thing. And people are exhausted. And sometimes what happens with leaders with tunnel vision is you might see people taking too long of a break, not doing the work, pushing back, arguing, complaining, whatever. And you might assume, oh, they're being disobedient. They're being disrespectful. They're being dishonoring, without taking time to really understand, like, man, they might be fatigued. They might be exhausted. They might be tired. One of the churches I worked at, probably two of them, I can say two of them. Two of the churches I worked at are massive churches. And my goodness, we did so many events. Privately, as a staff, we would tell people we're an event management company, not a church. We did so many events. I think one year I ran, when I was running operations at Victory, I think one year we ran 550 some odd events in a year. There are only 365 days, folks. That means multiple days had multiple events. That's a lot. So we were tired. So when innovation and change came through, Erskine, I see you. I know you in the chat. You was there with me. Pastor Erskine. We were there together, man. It was rough. And we would push back constantly, like, we can't do another thing. And it wasn't because we didn't believe in it. It was just like something's going to have to give. So as leaders, just kind of keep this in mind. If you're trying to push for change or innovation and people don't do it, or aren't doing it, it could be because of these other resistances that exist behind the wall. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to learn to identify these resistances better. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask questions before giving answers. Now, here's what I can tell you. If you're the person in the driver's seat leading change and innovation, you've been thinking about this for a while. You've thought about it. You've conceptualized on it. You've prayed about it. You've probably talked to some leadership or some partners or some peers on it. You've been thinking about this innovation or this change and all the reasons why you need to do it for a while. And then you make the announcement on a Monday staff meeting, or you send out the email to the congregation, and you're expecting everyone to have the same peace in this move as you do. But the problem is you've been sitting with this thought process for 6-9 months, maybe. You've been meditating on it. So you've got the clarity that now everybody else has to catch up and grab. And so this doesn't happen when you come and say, hey guys, we're doing a new thing. God didn't say we're doing a new thing and then pull the rug out. He gave calling, context, and conditions. Think about what happened in Ezekiel. When Ezekiel got his calling with context and conditions, God said, hey, I need you to go and confront a rebellious house, a rebellious nation. He didn't just say, good luck. That's not what he said. He said, oh, by the way, doing this is going to be uncomfortable. It says, pay no attention to the looks on their faces, the words that come out of their mouths, for they are rebellious people. Being with them will be as if you are among the thorns, the scorpions, and the briars. He's given context. This is going to be hard. And I thought through this already, and here's what it's going to feel like. But here's the how. I gave you the what, I gave you the why. Here's something else to chew on. If you keep my words in your mouth, they will know that I sent you. Those are the conditions. So what if we communicated change the same way the Lord communicated change to Ezekiel? Here's the thing I need you to do. And you know what, folks? It's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. It might be uncomfortable, but here's how we're going to get through this thing together. Here's how we're going to achieve this thing. So our ability to ask the right questions, invite these feedback loops, and get really, really clear with people about what it is that we're about to do by asking these questions. It says, what do you see? What are you afraid of? Let's look at it from operational standpoint. How many of us know that as leaders at the high and in higher seats, we can come up with an idea and have absolutely no idea what it takes to actually make it work? Hey guys, we're gonna do dot dot dot. We don't know the impact of building it out on the website, the manipulatives that have to be printed out, how many volunteers it takes to run that thing. We just shared the idea and said make it happen. So when we ask questions and we say things like, "Hey, this is what we want to do," I think it was Larry, I think said earlier, what if we invite people to the table? I think that's who it was. Invite people to the conversation so that we can hear from them. This is what this is. We're asking questions before we're giving answers. Okay, and the last thing is look beyond expression and search for explanation. Here's what I can tell you, folks. Our natural lean is to be able to express emotions way better than we can explain them. I can show you that I'm angry before I can explain what I'm angry about. I can show disappointment before I'm able to really explain what I'm disappointed about. That's just natural for all of us. And so when we see this, when we see anger, frustration, a furrowed brow, when we hear back talk or pushback, or maybe when we're the ones doing it, then we have to sit back and say, okay, I need to go past expressing this emotion, and I need to figure out how to explain this. I need to go deeper. I need to find the other layer to this. If you don't do this, you're only going to be navigating symptoms. You're going to be navigating symptoms. And you're going to be in these organizations I go to who have been trying to implement change, and there's the history and the culture of resistance. And so we have these legacy stories of, yeah, this organization just doesn't change well. I hear that all the time. Yeah, we don't do change well. You start talking to the lay leaders and the volunteers and the low level staff in separate rooms away from leadership, and they say, they never stick to what they say. We're always changing things. Shiny object syndrome. They're never clear on this. They're never clear on that. We just keep doing what we're going to do. I see it all the time, right? So we want to get clear here. We want to get clear here. Identify the resistances. Then we have to get clear. Innovators must clarify. You have to clarify direction, opportunities, challenges, purpose, roles, pathways, timelines, all of these things. If you're leading change and you're unclear, you're going to have problems. We all know this one. Write the vision to make it plain on tablets that he may run who reads it. How many of us have gotten directives from leadership, or perhaps we've given directives as leaders? And when we're done, somebody said, huh? What are we doing again? Help me understand. Hey, I heard everything you said. I internalized none of it. What are we doing? Right? This is true for a lot of us in leadership. And this isn't just limited to ministry. We know this. So I want to give you a visual for something that really kind of changed my ministry trajectory when I had thought about leaving the ministry to go back to law enforcement. And I got into a wrestling match with the Lord. Hence, I lost. He won. So I was about a year into my journey as a director of security in ministry after a 14-year wonderful career in law enforcement. And I was really wrestling with how to stick around, and I wanted to leave. Got into an argument with the Lord in my bathroom before jumping into the shower. When he asked me this question, he says, "Ryan, who are you?" And I said, "I'm a cop. I'm a cop stuck in a church, Lord. Send me back," is what I said. And he says, "Well, why is that who you are?" And I remember saying it audibly. I said, "Because that's just what I do. It's what I've always done." And this is the moment where I realized I was talking to the Lord and I wasn't talking to myself, because the Lord asked me a question a certain way that I would never ask it to myself, because I like me. So when I said, "It's just what I do," and I heard the Lord say, "Well, what else do you do?" I was like, uh-oh. What? And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, well, I do family. I'm a father, I'm a husband. I do church. I'm a pastor. I do music. I'm a multi-instrumentalist and a musician. I started listing all of these other things. And I heard the Lord ask me with such grace. He says, well, Ryan, why do none of those other things define you? You do a lot of things. Why do none of those things define you? And I was like, oh man. And I realized I had put myself in a box. Performatively, I'd put myself in a box. And the reason I didn't want to change, the reason I wanted to go back to captivity, so to speak, want to go back to my Egypt, was because I was uncomfortable with the promise that was in front of me. And I didn't understand my purpose. And so over the next couple of months, the Lord started dealing with me. And he gave me this vision for something called Purpose Place. And it was a mountain and a path, and I was standing on the path. It's kind of what you guys are looking at here. And he says, Ryan, you've got purpose. You just haven't figured it out yet. But the path I've got you on is going to lead you to clarity. And the problem is you've defined your purpose by the position you're currently occupying on the path, not by where I'm taking you. So because the position you're standing in is police officer, you thought that was your purpose. Because the position you're standing in is pastor, reverend, deacon, you thought that was your purpose. That's just a position. The truth about God is he can move regardless of what position you're in, because he's moving you towards purpose. So the goal is not to clarify positions. It's to clarify the path to purpose. All of us are knives, spoons, and forks, right? So we're all designed with the same purpose, but how we go about doing that is going to look different according to how we are uniquely made. We all serve. We just serve differently. You're a knife, I'm a spoon, I'm a fork. And you know what? Forks don't make great spoons. And try as I might to eat some soup with a fork, guys, I'm going to struggle, right? Because I'm in the wrong position. So this is the question everybody on the other side of your change and innovation is wrestling with. What's the purpose? How does this connect? And so your job as a leader is to help people get on their path to purpose and understand that just because your position might change, purpose does not. We might change the name of this ministry. You might change the title of your role. You might change the department you're operating in. But can I tell you what? We're moving towards purpose. There's a purpose for you here. There's a purpose for all of us here. Your job is to help make purpose so clear for people. This is what's really important for all of us, okay? So your job is to clarify purpose for people. To clarify purpose, not positions. Now, we need to clarify roles and responsibilities, but we want to tie it to purpose, because I'm going to tell you one of the things I see a lot of times in church is the administrators, the coordinators, the volunteers, the lay leaders, they don't know how their part plays into the bigger picture. And when people don't know how their role connects with the bigger picture, they resist because their position is now threatened. Their safety is threatened. They don't want to be replaced. Okay? So this is let me go back here so we have context here, right? What we're talking about here is these are the things you have to clarify. More than anything, you clarify purpose. And here's the last thing I want to share here with this before we kind of open up the questions. Innovators must communicate openly, often, clearly, honestly, early, frequently, bidirectionally. Communication is key for this. Absolutely key. Critical. And there's this great model that I'm going to share with you guys. You know, when you read this here, a man has joy by the answer of his mouth and a word spoken in due season. How good it is. When people speak to our fears, our concerns, when someone can assuage those fears and help us with clear communication, see ourselves more clearly, see our problems more clearly, see pathways more clearly, it makes everything better. It makes everything better. And I think one of the most helpful frameworks I ever got on communication was during a staff training when I was a pastor. And I want to share it with you all here because I think this is one of those things that you can take away from this conversation and immediately put it into practice. And it's simply called echo. Simply called echo. If you're a communicator and you're hearing things, you're hearing feedback that you don't like, you're getting mixed signals from people or what have you, a lot of times that is an echo of unclear communication. Innovation change cannot happen without clear communication. You're going to invite resistance if there's no clarity on the other end of what change looks like. And so this echo framework helps us really understand the importance of communicating early, clearly, honestly, and often. I love this acronym. Why early? Recency bias, and a couple of other heuristic biases that we navigate will force us against our will a lot of times to attach ourselves to the first piece of information we hear. The first thing we hear. And what do we know about a lot of churches? I'm not going to speak ill of anybody's church here. So let me speak of my experiences and some of the things I've heard. A lot of churches struggle with rumor mill, and gossip. And so if change is coming or things are coming down the pipe and we haven't gotten a lot of clarity, then people will try to make sense of the world they're in with the limited information they have. And this causes a lot of challenges for leaders because now you have to undo what someone else did without clarity, and it makes it harder for them to actually get clear. So this is why we do it early. In the PR space, we call this stealing thunder. Say it first because that's going to be the anchoring bias that people have. It's going to be the thing that they stick to. Typically, the first thing we hear is the thing that resonates the most. So we want to be early. We want to do it clearly. This is kind of obvious here. But for those of us in ministry, especially, one of the big challenges is that we are so caring for people that we struggle to say hard things well. We love to beat around the bush. Quick story. I had an employee who was terrible in ministry. Great person, really, really bad at their job. And one of the things, I love that. Bad news does not age well. That's great. That's better than the one that I typically say that I can't say here because I think it just wouldn't be nice. So I'm gonna adopt that, Tom. I had an employee who was really, really bad. They had been in the ministry for a very long time and they needed to leave, but nobody had the courage to tell that person to leave. And so by the time I inherited this person as an executive, this person had occupied 8 different roles in the church. And their new director was struggling. It's like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, hey, you know what? I think that person needs to go. We need to help them transition to their next season. We had a conversation. I coached this director on how to have this conversation and do all the things. We spent 30 minutes talking about how to navigate the conversation. We talked with HR. We had severance package, everything. It was going to be a beautiful way to honor this person's legacy and time in ministry. And then I sent the director off to do the hard thing. And about 15 minutes after their scheduled meeting, the director and the subordinate who needed to be let go because they were harmful for the church, I got a phone call from the subordinate. And the subordinate simply said, hey, you got a minute? And I said, yeah, I got a minute. What's up? And mind you, I was surprised, but not like too surprised because I knew that they had just had this conversation. He said, hey, so I'm a little confused. Can you give me some clarity? I said, yeah, what happened? He says, well, I just had a meeting with so-and-so, and they said, we're moving in a new direction. We're doing a new thing. We don't have a seat for you, but we're going to take care of you. You know, we're going to, am I fired or not? Like, do I still have a job? And I was like, uh-oh. I said, hey, man, come see me. Come to my office. And what I learned was that the director was so kind, it's not you. We love you. We're just going to switch seats up a little bit. They were so unclear because they didn't want to hurt this person's feelings that the person left the conversation and thought they still had a job. And we do this a lot in ministry. And one of the things we have to know is we take Tom's lead here, right? Bad news does not age well. And here's what I'll say is that the thing that we would typically put into the category of kindness is usually cruelty when it comes to hard news. When we delay giving people the information they need because we think it's going to make them feel better, but we don't give them the truth, that's cruelty. That kindness that you're trying to extend turns into cruelty on the other end. Okay. Same thing with honesty. We got to be honest. We got to be honest. And this is not to say that we're lying, but it is to say that a lot of times we give half truths And when it comes to these conversations around innovation, I did a 10-part change management and innovation graduate course for Wheaton College. And one of the things that was a real discussion point with that particular cohort was this idea that we hate to tell people that innovation is painful sometimes, that change is painful sometimes. And a lot of leaders will overinflate the positives and completely ignore the negatives that does come along with it. And when you do that, what happens is people get buyer's remorse. So you get everybody really, really excited about change and innovation and what something's going to look like. And then they get in and they realize this is a lot more painful than I was prepared to receive. And halfway to the land of milk and honey, they want to go back to captivity. Halfway to the better place, they want to go back to the worst place. And it's because we didn't do a good enough job of not Wheaton in Massachusetts, Wheaton College. It's a seminary in Illinois. Um, so listen, just be very, very careful not to over index on the highlight reels and forget to talk about the blooper reels. Okay. Don't just talk about the good stuff and ignore the bad stuff. You want people to have a fair understanding of what the lift is going to be like, because if you don't, and they start moving through this change and this innovation without clarity, without honesty, it's it's not going to end well for you as a leader. And if you're on the other end of this, you probably felt this. You've been in the meetings where someone made an announcement about a new thing, and then halfway through you're like, this is not what I expected at all. How much does that deflate you? Okay. And then the last one is often. Um, and often is because frequency leads to security. If we have these conversations frequently, if I know that I have a regular line of communication to my leadership, then what this does through there's a leadership theory called leader member exchange theory, and it just talks about not just the dyadic flow, but the frequent flow of information between leader and follower. This is how people get to the point where they're willing to come in early, leave late, and do more than what's on the job description. It's because there's open lines of communication. Frequent communication makes people feel closer to the solutions. One of my senior pastors, Colleen, um, I love it. She gave me a leadership lesson one day because I was asking her why she communicated with me the way she did. This was after I became executive pastor at Victory. She says, Ryan, some people will run with vision, other people will run away with vision. You need to know who to give your vision to. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's good, Pastor. You're talking good, as we would say. So there are some people we need to give a vision to because they're going to run with it. Other people, they might run away with vision, but you cannot be so tightly hanging on to it that you feel like you can't give vision clarity to anyone at all. Okay. Gosh, there's so much I want to say. We just don't have the time for it. Um, so listen, here's just a recap, right? We have to understand the resistances. We have to communicate clearly. We have to be personally convicted, and we have to have a shared purpose. This is what it's going to take to manage the pressure of innovation. Folks, I am not telling you how to eliminate pressure. I'm not telling you how to get rid of resistance. I'm telling you that resistance is a part of the equation. It's a part of the formula. If if leadership did not have problems, we wouldn't need leaders. I want you to think about that. If everything was easy, if there was no friction, we wouldn't need you. Everybody would just show up and do the thing and kumbaya, blessed be the Lord. We'd sing worship and everything would be perfect. We have leaders in place because we predictably understand that there are going to be problems and we need someone there to be the answer. That's you. So we're not designing out resistances. We are designing resilient personalities. We are designing in ourselves. I just realized you guys can't even see me. My hands are up and everything. I'm sorry. I'm going to turn the camera back on in a minute. I'm fired up over here. So I want you to understand this. This is for you. This is for you. Okay. You have to become the answer and the vehicle through which change and innovation can happen. People will only lead change and be changed once they feel safe, seen, and sure. That's what you're here to do. Let's have a conversation. First and foremost, in the chat, was this minutely helpful for anyone? today? I know there's a lot of meat left on the bones. Was this minutely helpful? Mindset shift. Mind you, this is information, not transformation. Transformation takes time. This is information. I've given you enough to go back and consider what implementation might look like. Transformation takes time. For anyone in the middle of the storm right now, take your time. Take your time. Don't try to do all of this in a week. It's not going to happen. But you can start being the conduit, the catalyst for this by championing these conversations, taking some of these concepts back to your team and asking great questions, getting to the root of resistance, making sure that everybody understands the destination and the purpose and the clarity and the pathway of all of these things. This is information to start the conversation. Okay? So with that, we've got like 2 hot minutes. If there's a quick question or something anyone wants to jump into, I'm more than happy to answer it. What I want to do for you all real quick though, and I want to say this because I'm really bad at doing this, and I want to do this here for everyone here. 2 things. One, if you scan this QR code, you're going to be asked to do a very brief survey. And what it does is it tells me how poorly I did today or how well I did. It just helps me improve the way I teach and instruct these things. You might have noticed from our time together, I don't try to approach this like a theologian or an academic. I like to try to be very practical and personable. I hope that's okay for you. The other thing is, once you've finished answering a few questions on here, you will actually be able to download a free sample of my new book, How to Untie a Balloon. Guess what the book is about? How to reduce pressure. That book has a lot of frameworks in it for you in order to do everything we talked about today, step by step. Okay. So if that's interesting for you, if that's something you want to do, you got the first few chapters of that for free. And if you want to go deeper, you can get a copy of that. Okay. All right. With that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Nappy in case he's got some closing comments.
Well, and as Ryan adjusts the camera, let me just offer some words of gratitude. First, gratitude for all of you for being here today. There are many things, I'm sure, on your plates and on the front burner of your life and your professional world. So thank you for making some time to be together, to talk with one another, and to begin welcoming into your life some tools to manage all of these challenges, not just professionally, but personally. I love, right, as I was listening to you teach, just realizing how universal this wisdom is. This helps us to be better in ministry. It helps us to be better humans. It helps us to be better in our families. And that is an exceptional gift at this really, really full time of year. And of course, thank you, Ryan, for your whole life, for your ministry. Please thank your family for us, for sharing your gifts with us, for supporting you, for their love for you, so that we can learn from you and steal you away from them for a little bit. So, Ryan, we hope you'll come back and join us. In the past, Ryan's offered some classes where we could, deepen this over time. But you can find him on his Instagram page and on his website. Conflictish is where I first found Ryan, and it's incredible wisdom and inspiration, Ryan, that you're giving away for free on a daily basis, and that's exceptionally gracious of you. The book is fantastic.
Don't remind me.
I read it. I've endorsed it. So check it out, and we hope to see you all soon, Ryan. Just know that you go with our deep affection and gratitude. So I wish you all so much peace. I wish you God's blessing as we move through these sacred days. I pray that each of you can find some spaciousness amid the fullness, some peace amid the harried pace, and just know how thankful we are for you, for your work, whether it be explicit work in ministry in the church, or whether it just be living your life with such a bright light, as I know you do. So I look forward to our learning in the future. Again, I've put into the chat one last time our link to Leaders Way. You can apply there. You can learn everything you need to know about being with us at Yale this June. Stay in touch and let us know how we can be supportive to you along your path. So take good care, everyone.